The NBA draft is built on belief. Every June, 30 front offices convince themselves they found the next face of the league, the next superstar, the next franchise savior. But the draft is a double-edged sword. For every LeBron, there's a Darko Milicic. For every Steph Curry, there's Johnny Flynn. For every Giannis, there's an Anthony Bennett. The draft isn't just where legends enter the league, it's where careers end before they ever begin. And the 2010s were the perfect example of exactly that. This decade gave us once-in-a-generation miracles: Kawhi, AD, Embiid, Jokic, Giannis. But it also gave us some of the most catastrophic draft decisions of the modern era. Not a role player who didn't pan out, not a guy who never developed a jumper. I'm talking about can't play in the league busts. I'm talking about flameouts so bad, GMs literally got fired and never seen again. I'm talking about lottery picks who were out of the NBA before their rookie contract even ended. Some were overhyped high school gods, some were broken big men, some were safe college picks with no NBA skill, some just evaporated. This isn't about sympathy, this is about the worst of the worst. The worst NBA draft picks each year from 2010 through 2019 that aged like spoiled milk. The selections that changed franchises in the worst way possible. This is the worst NBA draft pick of every year in the 2010s. The 2010 NBA draft was supposed to be about hope. John Wall went first to Washington and delivered. Instant all-star, face of the franchise. But after that, things got real messy. Evan Turner went second to Philly, the reigning college player of the year, supposed to be the next do-it-all guard. Instead, he became a solid role player who never lived up to the hype. Career averages of 9.7 points and 4.6 assists, respectable, but for the second overall pick in a draft with Paul George, Gordon Hayward, and DeMarcus Cousins still available, it's a clear miss, but not the worst pick in the class. Then at 3, the New Jersey Nets took Derek Favors out of Georgia Tech. Favors was raw, athletic, all potential. The Nets were desperate for a star and they thought they'd found their franchise big man. But Favors never developed an offensive game. He was a solid rebounder and rim protector for years in Utah, averaging 10 and 7 for his career, but he was never more than a role player. And for pick number 3, in a draft where Cousins, PG, and Hayward were right there, that's a problem. At 4, Minnesota took Wesley Johnson, and now we're getting into disaster territory. Johnson was a 6'7" wing out of Syracuse. Older prospect, supposed to be NBA ready, athletic, versatile, could guard multiple positions. The Wolves thought they were getting a foundational piece to pair with Kevin Love. Instead, they got a guy who averaged 6.3 points per game over 10 seasons. He couldn't shoot 36% from the field for his career, couldn't create, couldn't defend at a high level despite the tools. He bounced between 8 different teams and never stuck anywhere. The Wolves gave up on him after just 2 years. Then there's Ekpe Udoh at 6, Cole Aldridge at 11, Xavier Henry at 12, Ed Davis at 13. All busts, all gone within a few years. But here's the thing, while all those guys failed to live up to expectations, none of them were picked ahead of the real talent. Because sandwiched between all that mediocrity, Paul George went 10th, who, if you didn't know, is the only player left from this draft class still in the NBA. Gordon Hayward went 9th. DeMarcus Cousins, a 5-time All-Star and All-NBA center, went 5th. Even guys like Eric Bledsoe, who went 18th, and Lance Stevenson, who went in the second round, had more impact than most of the lottery. So who's the worst pick of 2010? It's not Favors, he at least had a solid 10-year career. It's not Turner, he was underwhelming, but he lasted. The worst pick of 2010? It has to be Wesley Johnson at number 4. Because he wasn't just a miss, he was a complete whiff. An older, safer prospect who turned out to be neither safe nor good. The Timberwolves passed on Cousins, a generational talent who fell because of attitude concerns, and took Johnson instead. And for the next decade, they watched Boogie dominate while Johnson rode the bench. Johnson wasn't just a bust, he was a franchise-altering mistake. And that set the tone for Minnesota's horrible decade, where they made the playoffs just once in that 10-year stretch. The 2011 draft class had star power at the top. Kyrie Irving went first, bona fide superstar and future Hall of Famer. Derek Williams went second to Minnesota, supposed to be a versatile forward who could score from anywhere. Instead, he averaged 8.5 points over 7 seasons and was out of the league by his late 20s. Couldn't defend, couldn't shoot consistently, the Wolves traded him after 2 years and he bounced between 5 teams before disappearing. But Williams wasn't even the biggest disaster. At number 6, the Washington Wizards, fresh off drafting John Wall, had a chance to build something special. Kemba Walker was on the board, Klay Thompson was available, Kawhi Leonard was sitting right there. Instead, they took Jan Vesely, a 6'11" Czech forward who could run and jump, and that was about it. The Wizards fell in love with his athleticism at the FIBA World Championship. They thought he'd be a Euro Blake Griffin, a rim-running, lob-catching highlight machine. Instead, he was terrified. Vesely couldn't handle the physicality, couldn't shoot 12% from 3 over 2 seasons, couldn't finish through contact. He looked overwhelmed every time he stepped on the floor. In 2 years, he averaged 3.6 points and 2.5 rebounds in just 13 minutes per game. By 2013, he was back in Europe. He had a solid career overseas, but in the NBA, he was cooked from day one. Then there's Bismack Biyombo at 7, Jonas Valanciunas at 5, Tristan Thompson at 4, all solid role players, but none of them were stars. And all of them were picked ahead of future All-NBA players like Klay Thompson, Kawhi Leonard, and Jimmy Butler. But the real gut punch, Kawhi and Klay and maybe even Jimmy will all be Hall of Famers, multi-time champions, all-stars, franchise cornerstones. So who's the worst pick of 2011? It has to be Jan Vesely at number 6. Not because he didn't try, not because he didn't care, but because he was so thoroughly unprepared for the NBA that he couldn't even survive 2 seasons. The Wizards whiffed hard, and while Derek Williams was bad, at least he lasted long enough to collect a few paychecks. Vesely, he's one of the biggest international busts in NBA history. In the Wizards, they spent another decade trying to recover. The 2012 draft class was loaded. Anthony Davis went first, generational talent, future MVP. But after that, the chaos started. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist went second to Charlotte, a defensive-minded forward with one of the ugliest jump shots in basketball history. He couldn't shoot 29% from 3 for his career. He was a solid defender, but in a league moving toward offense and spacing, he was already outdated. He averaged 9 points over 8 injury-plagued seasons before fading out. Then there's Bradley Beal at 3. He became a star. So did Damian Lillard at 6, and Draymond Green, a second-round pick, turned into a 4-time champion and defensive anchor. But sandwiched in there, disasters. At number 5, the Sacramento Kings, already and still to this day a dumpster fire of a franchise, took Thomas Robinson out of Kansas. Robinson dominated college, National Player of the Year, motor, energy, heart. He was supposed to be a double-double machine who could anchor the Kings' front court for years. Instead, he was undersized, outdated and lost. At 6'9", Robinson couldn't defend modern power forwards, couldn't stretch the floor, couldn't switch on to guards, and in an era where the league was getting faster and more versatile, he was stuck in the past. The Kings gave up on him after one season. He got shipped to Houston, then Portland, then Philly, then Brooklyn, then the Lakers. 5 teams in 4 years. He averaged 4.7 points and 4.5 rebounds for his career, and was out of the league by 2017. Meanwhile, Damian Lillard, picked one spot later, became one of the most clutch players in NBA history. Draymond turned into a champion. Even guys like Terrence Jones and Chris Middleton, picked later, had more impact. So who's the worst pick of 2012? It's Thomas Robinson at number 5. Not because he didn't care, he played hard every night, but because he was a relic, a throwback big man in a league that had already moved on. The Kings struck out. Again. And for a franchise that spent the entire 2010s in the lottery, Robinson was just another name on a long list of mistakes. He had the heart, but heart doesn't win you games when the game has passed you by. The 2013 draft didn't have a clear-cut superstar at the top. It was a weak class. No LeBron, no Durant, no generational talent everyone agreed on. But it still gave us some solid players. Victor Oladipo went second. He became a 2-time All-Star and Defensive Player of the Year. Otto Porter went third. Solid role player, nothing special. CJ McCollum at 10th turned into a bucket. Rudy Gobert at 27th became a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. And then there's Giannis Antetokounmpo at 15th, the best player in the entire class and arguably a top 15 player of all time. But at number 1, the Cleveland Cavaliers, still reeling from losing LeBron 3 years earlier, shocked the world by taking Anthony Bennett, a 6'8" power forward from UNLV who just had shoulder surgery before the draft. Red flag number 1. Bennett showed up to training camp overweight, out of shape, and unprepared. And from game 1, it was obvious he wasn't ready for the NBA. He didn't score in his first game, or his second, or his third, or his fourth. It took him until his 5th game to score his first basket, and by then, the panic was real. Bennett averaged 4.2 points and 3 rebounds as a rookie on 35% shooting. He couldn't defend, couldn't create, couldn't finish around the rim despite being an athletic forward. The Cavs gave up on him after just one season, shipping him to Minnesota in the Kevin Love trade. The Timberwolves gave up on him. So did Toronto and Brooklyn. By 2017, Bennett was out of the NBA entirely. Done. Finished. He bounced overseas, Turkey, Taiwan, the Philippines, played in the G League, tried comebacks, none of it worked. He averaged 4.4 points for his career, the worst number 1 pick in NBA history, and it's not even close. So who's the worst pick of 2013? There's no debate, no discussion. It's Anthony Bennett at number 1. The Cavs didn't just miss, they became a meme, a punchline, a trivia answer for the rest of eternity. Bennett is the standard by which all draft busts are measured, and nothing, not injuries, not bad luck, not poor fit, can excuse what happened in Cleveland that night. The 2014 draft was hyped to be one of the best draft classes in a long time. Andrew Wiggins went first to Cleveland, then immediately got traded to Minnesota. He had all the tools, athleticism, length, scoring ability, but he never developed the competitive fire. Averaged 19 points for his career, made one All-Star team, and became the poster child for empty stats on bad teams. Jabari Parker went second to Milwaukee. Torn ACL. Then another torn ACL. His career was over before it really started. He averaged 14 points over 6 injury-riddled seasons before bouncing overseas. Joel Embiid went third and became a superstar, but he didn't play for 2 years due to foot injuries. High risk, high reward, Philly got it right. Then there's Aaron Gordon at 4, Nick Stauskas at 8, Elfrid Payton at 10, all underwhelming for where they were picked. But the real disaster? Dante Exum at number 5. The Utah Jazz took an 18-year-old Australian guard who'd barely played organized basketball. The hype was massive. He was 6'6" with elite speed and defensive tools. Scouts compared him to Penny Hardaway. The Jazz thought they'd found their franchise point guard. Instead, they found a walking medical report. Exum tore his ACL in his second season, missed an entire year, came back and never looked the same. His explosiveness was gone, his confidence was shot, and his shooting, it never developed. 32% from 3 for his entire career. Over 6 seasons in Utah, Exum averaged 6.1 points and 2.4 assists. He couldn't stay healthy, couldn't stay on the court, and when he was available, he couldn't crack the rotation. By 2019, the Jazz let him walk. He bounced to Cleveland, Houston, and eventually overseas. Meanwhile, Zach LaVine went 13th and became a 2-time All-Star. Nikola Jokic went 41st and became a 2-time MVP. Even guys like Gary Harris and Rodney Hood had more productive careers. So who's the worst pick of 2014? It's Dante Exum at number 5. Not because he didn't try and not because he didn't have talent, but because his body betrayed him before his career ever started, and the Jazz gambled on upside and lost everything. The 2015 draft will always be remembered for Karl Anthony Towns going first to Minnesota. He became everything you'd want from a number 1 pick: All-Star, All-NBA, franchise cornerstone. D'Angelo Russell went second. Solid career, made an All-Star team, but never became the star the Lakers hoped for. But at 3, the Philadelphia 76ers, deep in the process, selected Jahlil Okafor out of Duke. At the time, it seemed smart. Okafor was a traditional back-to-the-basket big man. Silky post moves, soft touch, he dominated college basketball and looked like a throwback to the golden era of centers. The problem? The NBA had moved on. This was 2015. The Warriors had just won a title playing small and fast. The league was going 3-point heavy, and Okafor, he couldn't shoot threes, couldn't defend the pick and roll, couldn't switch onto guards, couldn't protect the rim. He was outdated before he played a single game. Okafor averaged 17 points as a rookie, but his defense was a disaster. The Sixers were historically bad with him on the floor. He had the lowest defensive rating in the league, and when Joel Embiid returned from injury, it became clear there was no room for Okafor in Philly's future. He got traded to Brooklyn after 2 years, then New Orleans, then Detroit. By 2021, he was out of the league. He averaged 8.9 points and 4.7 rebounds for his career, fine for a second rounder, terrible for the 3rd overall pick. Meanwhile, Devin Booker went 13th and became a superstar. Miles Turner went 11th and became one of the league's best rim protectors. Even Montrezl Harrell in the 2nd round had more impact. So who's the worst pick of 2015? It's Jahlil Okafor at number 3. He was a good player, but he was born in the wrong era, and the Sixers learned a brutal lesson. Fit matters more than talent. Okafor wasn't a bust because he couldn't play. He was a bust because the game had passed him by. The 2016 draft had star power. Ben Simmons went first, Jaylen Brown went 3rd, Jamal Murray went 7th, Pascal Siakam went 27th, but in between, chaos. Chris Dunn went 5th to Minnesota. Supposed to be a two-way point guard who could defend and facilitate. Instead, he was stiff, couldn't shoot, only 31% from 3, and never figured out how to run an offense. He bounced between 4 teams in 6 years before fading into irrelevance. Marquise Chris went 8th to Phoenix. Raw athleticism, high upside, zero discipline. He racked up technicals, fought with teammates, and couldn't figure out the game. out of the league by 2022 after averaging 5.7 points. But the real disaster, Dragan Bender at number 4. The Phoenix Suns, always the Suns, took a 7-footer from Croatia who could shoot and handle the ball. They thought they had the next Dirk Nowitzki, a European big man who could stretch the floor and play modern basketball. Instead, they got a ghost. Bender was soft, couldn't defend, couldn't rebound, couldn't create his own shot, and despite being a shooter, he shot just 36% from the field and 32% from 3 over 4 seasons. He averaged 5.3 points and 3.6 rebounds in 17 minutes per game. He looked lost on both ends of the floor, overmatched, overwhelmed, and by 2020, he was out of the league entirely. The Suns gave up on him after 3 years. Milwaukee gave him a shot. Golden State tried him in training camp. Nothing worked. He's now overseas playing in Spain, far away from the NBA spotlight. Meanwhile, Jamal Murray went 7th and became a champion and Finals MVP. Pascal Siakam went 27th and became an All-Star and champion. Even DeJounte Murray at 29th turned into a star. So who's the worst pick of 2016? It's Dragan Bender at number 4. The Suns didn't just miss, they whiffed on a guy who was supposed to redefine the power forward position. Instead, he couldn't even survive a rookie contract. Bender had the size, the skills, the pedigree, but when the lights came on, he disappeared. The 2017 draft gave us Jason Tatum, Donovan Mitchell, and Bam Adebayo, but it also gave us some spectacular failures. Markelle Fultz went first to Philadelphia, the most hyped guard since John Wall, smooth scorer, elite playmaker, then he forgot how to shoot. Literally. His shot broke, the yips, shoulder injuries, mental struggles. He averaged 11 points over 6 injury-riddled seasons and never came close to living up to the hype. Lonzo Ball went second. Solid playmaker, good defender, but couldn't stay healthy and never became the star the Lakers wanted. But at number 4, the Phoenix Suns, yes, them again, selected Josh Jackson out of Kansas. Jackson was supposed to be a two-way wing. Explosive athlete, lockdown defender, high motor, the Suns thought they'd found their next franchise cornerstone. Instead, they found a disaster. Jackson showed flashes as a rookie, but off the court, complete chaos. Arrested for trying to sneak into a music festival, accused of throwing a basketball at a child's mother, multiple run-ins with the law. On the court, his shooting never developed. He shot 26% from 3 as a rookie. It didn't improve, 32% for his career. His decision-making was terrible, his shot selection was worse, and his defense, the one thing he was supposed to be elite at, fell apart. The Suns gave up on him after 2 seasons. Memphis tried him, Detroit gave him a shot. By 2023, he was out of the NBA and bouncing overseas. He averaged 8.8 points for his career, but more than the stats, it was the attitude and off-court disasters that killed him. Meanwhile, Donovan Mitchell went 13th and became a 5-time All-Star. Bam Adebayo went 14th and became an All-Star and elite defender. Even John Collins and Jarrett Allen had solid careers. So who's the worst pick of 2017? Josh Jackson at number 4. Fultz had injuries and mental struggles, but Jackson, he had talent and threw it all away with poor decisions, worse behavior, and zero discipline. The Suns struck out, again, and Jackson became another name on the list of wasted potential. The 2018 draft was deep. DeAndre Ayton went first, Luka Doncic went 3rd, Trae Young went 5th, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander went 11th. All-Stars. But at number 2, the Sacramento Kings, yes, the Kings, made one of the worst decisions in NBA history. They passed on Luka Doncic for Marvin Bagley III. Bagley was a talented big man out of Duke, athletic, could score in the paint, averaged a double-double in college. The Kings thought he'd be their franchise cornerstone for the next decade. Instead, they got an injury-prone tweener who couldn't stay on the court. Bagley missed significant time in each of his first 4 seasons. Foot injuries, knee issues, hand injuries, thumb surgeries. He couldn't stay healthy long enough to develop chemistry or consistency. And when he was on the court, he was underwhelming. He couldn't stretch the floor, 25% from 3 for his career, couldn't defend the rim, couldn't switch onto guards. He was stuck between positions in a league that had moved past traditional big men. Over 4 seasons in Sacramento, Bagley averaged 10.9 points and 7.4 rebounds. Respectable for a role player, terrible for the number 2 pick. The Kings gave up on him in 2022. He bounced to Detroit, then Washington, then overseas. Meanwhile, Luka Doncic, the guy they passed on, became a 5-time All-Star, All-NBA first-team selection, and one of the best players in the world. Trae Young became a star. Shea became an MVP and an NBA champion. Even Mikal Bridges and Michael Porter Jr., taken later, had more impact. So who's the worst pick of 2018? It has to be Marvin Bagley III at number 2. Not because he didn't try, not because he wasn't talented, but because the Kings passed on a generational player for an injury-prone big man who couldn't fit the modern game. It's not just a bust, it's a franchise-defining mistake that set Sacramento back another half-decade. The 2019 draft gave us Zion, Ja Morant, and RJ Barrett, but at pick number 6, a premium draft position, the Minnesota Timberwolves took Jarrett Culver. This wasn't a gamble on a random sleeper, this was a top 6 lottery pick. Culver was supposed to be a two-way wing with size, feel, and shot creation. He led Texas Tech to a national title game. He looked like a plug-and-play modern wing. In reality, he was one of the biggest draft misfires of this entire decade. His jumper never translated. His handle wasn't tight enough to create advantages. His body wasn't strong enough to guard up a position. He didn't have elite athletic pop or elite shooting. He was a pretty good at everything, elite at nothing prospect, and the league exposed that quickly. In Minnesota, he averaged 7.8 points on brutal shooting splits, 40% from the field, 28% from 3. He got traded to Memphis, barely cracked the rotation, then he hit Atlanta, barely played again. By 2023, he was out of the league. For a second-round pick, you'd shrug that off, but this was the 6th pick in the draft, and that same range delivered NBA starters. Kobe White went 7, Rui Hachimura went 9, Cam Johnson went 11. Meanwhile, Culver never carved out a single defined NBA skill. He wasn't just the worst pick of 2019, he was a brutal reminder that solid college wing does not equal NBA advantage creator. Jarrett Culver had the resume, he didn't have the pro game. The 2010s gave us some of the greatest draft picks in NBA history. Giannis, Kawhi, Jokic, Draymond, but they also gave us some of the worst, from Anthony Bennett's historic failure to Jan Vesely's deer-in-headlights rookie year to Josh Jackson's wasted potential. These weren't just bad picks, they were franchise-altering mistakes, careers that never got off the ground, dreams that ended before they started. Some were victims of injuries, some were victims of bad fit, and some, they were just never good enough. The draft is a gamble, a high-stakes poker game where one wrong move can cost you a decade of mediocrity. In the 2010s, they reminded us that even in a league full of superstars, failure is always one pick away. If you made it this far, drop a comment. What's the worst draft pick you remember? Was it Bennett at number 1, Vesely that never figured it out, or maybe the Sixers trading away Mikal Bridges? And if you want more deep dives into NBA history, mistakes, and madness, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This is Hoop Dungeon, and we'll see you in the next one.